Are you a career professional who you feel like the pandemic affected your public speaking skills in a negative way? Before the pandemic, you were okay with having to speak in front of your coworkers, your team, your organization, but now you're not feeling as confident. That's what I am hearing when I look on these online streets, when a lot of business professionals are talking about their presentation skills. They're saying that the pandemic had a negative effect. Why? Because many of us had to go online and do any kind of public speaking. It's a little different when you have to be in person, in front of everyone, in the room. It's a different feeling altogether. So there are many career professionals who are like, ugh, I know my public speaking skills are not what they used to be before the pandemic hit us 4 years ago. So, what can you do? How can you get yourself feeling confident again with your public speaking skills? How can you rebuild your skill set? Well, today that's what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to give you 3 tips. If you are a career professional, 3 tips for how to rebuild your confidence when it comes to your public speaking skills. Here's number 1. You have to embrace the nerves. Instead of ignoring them, you have to embrace them. I know that seems counterintuitive. You've probably read a lot of articles or seen videos where they tell you do this, do that to get rid of your public speaking nerves. Well, no. Nerves are actually normal. They are a sign that you care about your presentation. Nerves can also be very beneficial for you. We like to think of nerves in the negative, but nerves can actually serve a very positive purpose. That adrenaline that's running through your body, you can actually leverage that. Leverage it to give you energy, to give your presentation. Let yourself feel excited. Excitement and nervousness are really the same sensation in your body when you think about it. It's just that we think about them differently. So it's almost like if you're trying to resist the nerves, that's not going to serve you. It's like you're fighting against something that is natural. Nerves are normal. People who've been speaking for years have nerves. So I want to encourage you, do not think that you are weird for being nervous. It is okay. You have to figure out how to reframe that anxiety that you feel. How can you use it to serve you? I like to think of nervousness as helping me to keep my edge instead of being on the edge. I'm going out there, I'm giving the audience all that I have. I'm letting the enthusiasm to come out. Why? Because again, I have that adrenaline going through me. So, number 1, embrace the nerves. Do not feel like you have to get rid of them. That's really not the way to go about it. Now, anxiety that is overwhelming versus nervousness, yes, a little bit different. And there are ways to deal with overwhelming anxiety, whether you have to talk to a therapist or work with someone like me, a public speaking coach. But more often than not, I find that a lot of people, they're nervous. And here's the thing, you have to find out what is triggering your nervousness. A lot of people know they're nervous, but they don't take the time to figure out why. We all have different triggers that will cause us to be anxious in a public speaking situation. Is it the size of the audience? Do you get more nervous with a larger audience? Do you get nervous with a smaller audience? Don't laugh. Some people actually do get nervous with a smaller audience. Do you get nervous because of a past negative experience that you had? There are different reasons that we all get nervous, so knowing our triggers, finding those out is very helpful as well. Number 2, gradually and consistently expose yourself to speaking situations. Work your way up from smaller, low stakes situations to higher, bigger stakes situations. Here's what I mean as far as low stakes. Perhaps you give your remarks in a meeting that you are in, especially if the agenda was set ahead of time. You had time to look it over and to figure out what on the agenda you want to speak to at the meeting. What do you want to give your perspective on, your thoughts, your ideas on? You can do that. That's low stakes. Another example of a low stakes situation: introduce yourself to a colleague at work. Perhaps there is someone new there that has started, or someone who's been there but you've never actually introduced yourself to. Hi, I am so and so. I work in the so and so department. It is nice to meet you. That's just a easy, low stakes way to get yourself comfortable with talking with someone before you move your way up to a crowd. Another example of low stakes is some meetings, they might have someone who gives a quote or some type of thought at the beginning of the meeting that helps to set the tone for that meeting, even in work situations. So if you might have that type of team that you work for, you might work at that type of organization where they're not going right into the meeting. They're having someone start it off. Maybe it's an icebreaker. Maybe, like I said, it's giving a quote. It's something thought provoking for everyone to think about before you go into the meat of the meeting. You could be that person that starts off the meeting that really helps to set the mood. So that's another low stakes way. Build yourself up to higher stakes scenarios, such as partnering with a coworker on a presentation, and then eventually working your way up to giving the presentation yourself. Of course, I would suggest talking with your boss, talk with your manager about this, especially if you have a good relationship with them. But even if you don't, it's helpful to let them know what you're struggling with. A manager wants to see their team succeed. They can't help you if they don't know what your challenges are. And let me add, many companies do have a professional development budget. I can't tell you how many times when I worked in corporate, that was something I took full advantage of. I would ask my boss, hey, do we have funds for professional development? I would like to do A, B, or C. Almost every time the answer was yes, we do have the funds. Now, how they go about helping you, whether that is a course, whether that's books that they'll have bought for you for the team, you have to discuss that with your boss. They'll let you know what's available. But a lot of people do not think about the company. The departments usually have a professional development budget. I urge you to talk to your manager about that. Here's number 3. Socialize outside of work. What happened during the pandemic? Pretty much everybody was not physically near each other for at least a year. So co-workers who were well acquainted with each other before the pandemic were not in each other's physical space at all for at least a year. That does something to you. So I encourage you, yes, even though you knew each other before the pandemic, now that you're back in the office again, now that you're amongst each other more regularly, I encourage you to rebuild those social bonds. Get to know each other as people again. Again, being separated physically for a year, you never know what's really going on with people. There might have been a lot of things that have happened. So it is worth it to get to know each other again. And it doesn't have to be anything formal. Go to lunch. Go to lunch with your team members or other people in the company. Go to a coffee break. Have a coffee break with each other. Or I remember when I worked for one company, they had these co-working, I don't think you'd call it an event, but it was co-working where you and a coworker would get together, go walking together for 15 or 20 minutes, talk about whatever you wanted to talk about. But it was nice because we got to know each other outside of work. So try that. It really might be helpful because you're going to feel like I'm talking to supportive colleagues instead of judgmental strangers when it's time to speak. Let me know which one of these 3 tips helps you.